The arrival and first trials. Instructor Zakthor stood at the observation deck of the Intergalactic Combat Academy, his forearms crossed behind his back as he surveyed the training grounds below. In his 40 years of service, he had trained over 10,000 cadets from 300 different species. His success rate was legendary. 92% of his graduates went on to become elite operatives in their respective militaries. The remaining 8% either quit or required extensive medical rehabilitation. He considered both outcomes acceptable. The Academy itself was a marvel of engineering, floating in the neutral zone between four major galactic powers. Its facilities could simulate virtually any environment in known space, from the crushing depths of water worlds to the thin atmospheres of mountain planets. Zakthor had personally designed half the courses, each one calibrated to push cadets to their absolute limits without actually killing them. Usually, his scaled hide, a deep purple that darkened to black at the edges, bore scars from a dozen different wars. His species, the Thraken, were natural warriors. They evolved on a world where everything was a predator, and only the strongest survived to reproduce. This made them ideal instructors for combat training. Zakthor took pride in his ability to identify weakness within the first hour of meeting a cadet. Today, he was expecting a human. The species file sat on his datapad, largely unread. Zakthor had learned long ago not to waste time on detailed research. Cadets either had what it took or they did not. The practical tests revealed everything necessary. Still, he glanced at the basic statistics while waiting for the transport shuttle to dock. Species, Homo sapiens. Origin, planet designated Terra, Sector 249. Gravity, 1.0 standard units. Atmosphere, nitrogen-oxygen mix. Average temperature, moderate. Classification, garden world. Zakthor's mandibles clicked in something resembling amusement. Another soft-worlder. The galaxy was full of them, species that evolved on comfortable planets where the weather was pleasant and food grew on trees. They made adequate technicians and decent diplomats, but they rarely excelled in combat roles. Their bodies were simply too fragile, their survival instincts too dulled by generations of easy living. The shuttle docked with a mechanical hiss. Zakthor watched the airlock cycle through its sequence, then descend to the landing platform. The first passenger to emerge was a Felzorian merchant, followed by two Krell engineers returning from leave. Then came the human. She was smaller than he expected. Most species in the Academy stood at least 7 feet tall, but this human barely reached 6. Her frame appeared delicate, with thin limbs and pale skin that looked like it would bruise at the slightest impact. She wore standard-issue training clothes, a simple grey uniform that hung loosely on her small frame. Her hair, dark brown and cut short, moved slightly in the recycled air of the docking bay. What struck Zakthor most was her expression. Or rather, the lack of one. Most new cadets arrived with visible anxiety. Their bodies betrayed their nervousness through elevated heart rates, sweat production, or nervous movements. This human simply walked down the ramp, adjusted the bag on her shoulder, and looked around with mild curiosity, as if she had just arrived at a shopping center rather than the most demanding military academy in 4 sectors. Zakthor descended from the observation deck and crossed the landing platform. His heavy footsteps echoed against the metal floor, a sound he knew intimidated most species. The human turned toward him, made eye contact, and waited. Maya Torres, he announced, his voice amplified by the translator device embedded in his throat. I am Instructor Zakthor. You have enrolled in the Advanced Survival Program. This is your final opportunity to reconsider. The course has a 63% completion rate. Those who fail often require medical intervention. Some require psychological rehabilitation. A small number do not survive. Maya tilted her head slightly. Cool. Where do I drop my stuff? Zakthor's primary eyes narrowed. Did you understand what I just said? Yeah, hard course, might die, got it. Honestly, the recruiter already went through all this. I signed like 15 different waivers. She shifted her bag to the other shoulder. So, barracks. For a moment, Zakthor simply stared at her. In his 4 decades of teaching, he had never encountered such casual dismissal of the dangers ahead. It was either breathtaking confidence or stunning stupidity. He suspected the latter. Barracks are in Section 7. You have 2 hours to settle in. Report to Training Ground Alpha at 0800 tomorrow. Do not be late. He turned to leave, then paused. And Torres, whatever your recruiter told you about this program, they were being generous. The reality is much worse. Maya gave him a thumbs up, a gesture his translator informed him indicated approval. Looking forward to it. Zakthor watched her walk away, her gait relaxed and unhurried. He activated his comm device. Veltara, we have a problem. The voice of his assistant instructor crackled through. Already? The human just arrived. Exactly. Something is wrong with this one. She shows no fear response at all. Maybe humans just hide it better than other species. Perhaps. Zakthor was not convinced. Prepare the pressure chamber for tomorrow. Let us see how well she hides fear when she cannot breathe. The next morning arrived with the artificial dawn the station used to maintain circadian rhythms for species that needed them. Zakthor was already in the observation room above the pressure chamber when Maya arrived, exactly on time. She wore the same casual expression as yesterday, though she had at least changed into proper training gear. Veltara, a slender Asari with crystalline skin that refracted light in rainbow patterns, handed Maya a breathing apparatus. This mask will provide oxygen when the atmospheric pressure drops. Keep it on at all times. If you experience dizziness, nausea, or chest pain, signal immediately and we will extract you. Maya examined the mask with interest. What kind of pressure are we talking about? We start at sea level equivalent for your world, then reduce oxygen content while increasing pressure to simulate high altitude and deep water conditions simultaneously. Veltara's voice carried genuine concern. Most species cannot tolerate this for more than a few minutes. Who? Okay. Maya fitted the mask over her face and gave another thumbs up. Zakthor activated the chamber controls. The heavy door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and the atmospheric processors began their work. He watched the readouts carefully. Oxygen levels dropping. Pressure increasing. Temperature stable at 15 degrees Celsius. Inside the chamber, Maya stood with her arms at her sides, breathing steadily through the mask. Her vital signs, displayed on the monitor beside Zakthor, showed a slightly elevated heart rate but nothing concerning. Subject appears stable, Veltara observed. Respiratory rate is normal. Zakthor increased the pressure. The chamber now simulated conditions equivalent to 3,000 meters above sea level on most standard worlds. At this level, most species began showing signs of distress. The Krell engineers he trained last month had both requested extraction within 4 minutes. Maya shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She appeared to be examining the walls of the chamber. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Zakthor increased the pressure again, now simulating 5,000 meters. The oxygen content was barely 40% of standard atmosphere. His own species would struggle at this level without acclimatization. Maya sat down cross-legged on the floor. She still appeared completely calm. This makes no sense, Veltara said, her crystalline features reflecting her confusion. Her oxygen saturation should be dropping. She should be gasping for air. Zakthor checked the equipment. Everything functioned perfectly. The chamber was performing exactly as designed. He increased the pressure to its maximum setting, simulating conditions found at 8,000 meters altitude. At this level, most species would lose consciousness within minutes. Maya reached up and pulled off her breathing mask. No! Veltara shouted, lunging for the emergency extraction button. Zakthor grabbed her arm. Wait! Look at her vitals. On the monitor, Maya's oxygen saturation had dropped, but only to 92%. Her heart rate increased to compensate, but remained within safe parameters. She took several deep breaths of the thin air, her chest rising and falling steadily. Then she put the mask back on. Her voice came through the intercom, slightly muffled. "Sorry, I wanted to see what it felt like without the mask. Kind of like being in the mountains back home. We have places on Earth where people live at this altitude permanently. Takes a few weeks to adjust, but it is totally doable." Zakthor and Veltara exchanged glances. "End the test," Zakthor said quietly. "We need to review the human data files. All of them." The chamber repressurized, and Maya emerged looking slightly flushed but otherwise unharmed. She stretched, joints cracking audibly. "That was interesting. What is next?" "Next," Zakthor said slowly, "is the toxin maze. But first, I have some reading to do." The toxin maze occupied an entire sublevel of the academy. It was a network of corridors filled with various atmospheric hazards designed to test a cadet's ability to function in chemically hostile environments. The gases used were not immediately lethal, but prolonged exposure caused severe respiratory damage in most species. Cadets wore protective suits with filtered breathing systems, but the suits were deliberately imperfect, allowing small amounts of contamination through to trigger the body's natural alarm responses. Zakthor had spent the past 3 hours reading the complete human data files. What he discovered disturbed him more than he cared to admit. Earth was not classified as a garden world by any objective measure. The file clearly labeled it as a Class 12 Deathworld, a designation reserved for planets where the environment itself was actively hostile to most forms of life. The atmospheric composition alone was alarming. 21% oxygen, a concentration high enough to support rapid combustion and create violent wildfires. The presence of free oxygen in such quantities indicated a planet where oxidation happened constantly, rusting metal, aging organic matter, creating an environment of perpetual chemical warfare. But that was just the beginning. Earth's gravity, listed as 1.0 standard units in the basic file, was actually significantly higher than the galactic average. Most spacefaring species evolved on worlds with 0.7 to 0.9 standard gravity. Humans had adapted to conditions that would cause long-term skeletal and muscular stress in other species. Then there were the biological hazards. Earth was home to countless microorganisms, many of them pathogenic. Humans existed in a constant state of siege, their immune systems fighting off thousands of potential infections daily. They had evolved elaborate defensive mechanisms just to survive their own planet's ecosystem. And the temperature variations. Earth's axial tilt created seasonal changes that would qualify as extreme environmental shifts on most worlds. Humans regularly experience temperature swings of 30 or 40 degrees Celsius and considered this normal weather. Zakthor closed the data file and rubbed his temples. How had the Academy recruiters classified humans as suitable for standard training? They should have been flagged for special protocols immediately. He found Maya waiting outside the toxin maze, already suited up. Veltara was running equipment checks, her crystalline body refracting the corridor lights nervously. "The suit will protect you from the worst of the contamination," Zakthor explained, "but you will still be exposed to low levels of chlorine gas, sulfur compounds, and various industrial solvents. Move through the maze as quickly as possible. Your goal is to reach the exit on the far side. If you experience burning sensations in your throat or eyes, if you feel dizzy or nauseous, signal immediately." Maya nodded. "Got it. Poison air, move fast, don't die." "Essentially, yes." The maze door opened, and Maya stepped inside. Zakthor and Veltara moved to the monitoring station, where screens displayed Maya's progress through the corridors. The first section used a mild chlorine mixture, enough to cause discomfort but not permanent damage. Maya walked through it without hesitation, her breathing steady through the suit's filters. Section 2 introduced sulfur dioxide, a gas that caused severe irritation to mucous membranes. Maya slowed slightly, but kept moving forward. Section 3 combined both gases with trace amounts of ammonia. This was the breaking point for most cadets. The mixture was designed to be psychologically overwhelming, triggering panic responses even through the protective equipment. Maya stopped walking. For a moment, Zakthor thought she might signal for extraction. Instead, she reached up and adjusted her helmet seal, then continued forward at the same steady pace. Her suit readings show minimal stress indicators, Veltara said, disbelief clear in her voice. She is treating this like a casual walk. The fourth and final section was the most challenging. It used a cocktail of industrial solvents that could eat through organic tissue if given enough time. The suits provided protection, but the psychological effect of knowing you were surrounded by corrosive chemicals typically ended most attempts. Maya reached the exit door, pressed the release button, and stepped out into the clean air of the decontamination chamber. The entire maze had taken her 11 minutes to complete. The Academy record was 18 minutes, set by a Thraken cadet 3 years ago. When Maya emerged from decontamination, she was smiling. That was actually kind of fun. Reminded me of the time I worked in a paint factory during summer break. Way better ventilation here though. Zakthor stared at her. You have voluntarily exposed yourself to industrial solvents before. I mean, yeah? That is what paint is. Solvents and pigments. The fumes were pretty bad, but you just wear a respirator and take breaks outside. No big deal. No big deal, Zakthor repeated flatly. He looked at Veltara. I need to see the complete Earth environmental data. All of it. Instructor, Maya said, can I ask a question? What? When do we get to the hard stuff? These first 2 tests were pretty basic. I thought this was supposed to be an advanced program. For the first time in his 40-year career, Instructor Zakthor had no idea what to say. Breaking point and revelation. The Predator Arena was Zakthor's masterpiece, a carefully designed ecosystem that housed some of the most dangerous creatures from across the known galaxy. The arena itself was massive, spanning nearly a kilometer in diameter, with varied terrain that included rocky outcroppings, shallow water features, and dense artificial vegetation. It was designed to give predators every advantage while forcing cadets to rely on their wits and training to survive. Zakthor had never lost a cadet in the arena. He came close a few times, but the safety protocols always activated before permanent damage occurred. The key was knowing exactly how much danger each species could handle. He calibrated the difficulty based on the cadet's physical capabilities, reaction time, and threat assessment skills. For Maya Torres, he honestly had no idea what to expect anymore. She stood at the arena entrance, wearing light armor and carrying a basic shock staff, standard equipment for the exercise. The goal was simple: cross the arena without being incapacitated by the creatures within. Most cadets accomplished this through stealth and evasion. A few of the more aggressive species attempted direct confrontation. Both approaches worked if executed properly. The creatures inside are hungry and territorial, Zakthor explained through the comm system. They will attack on sight. Your shock staff will deter them but not kill them. Use it wisely. You have 1 hour to reach the far exit. If you are injured, the arena will automatically extract you. Maya tested the weight of the shock staff, spinning it experimentally. What kind of creatures are we talking about? Razor wings from Kelter Prime, shadow stalkers from the Veil Nebula colonies, and 1 crimson WYRM from the deep caves of Thraken itself. Zakthor allowed himself a moment of pride. The WYRM is mine personally. I captured it during my military service. Cool. So how big is this WYRM? Approximately 4 meters in length. Its scales can deflect most projectile weapons, and its venom causes paralysis within seconds. Okay, so don't get bit. Got it. Maya rolled her shoulders and approached the entrance. Let's do this. The door opened, and she stepped into the arena. Zakthor watched from the control room, tracking Maya's position on the holographic display. Veltara stood beside him, her crystalline fingers hovering near the emergency extraction controls. Around them, several other instructors had gathered, word having spread about the unusual human cadet who kept defying expectations. First contact in 30 seconds, Veltara announced. Razorwing approaching from the northeast quadrant. On the screens, Maya moved through the artificial jungle with surprising grace. She kept low, using the vegetation for cover, her head constantly moving as she scanned her surroundings. When the razorwing burst from the canopy above, its meter-long wingspan spread wide and its crystalline talons extended, most species would have panicked. Maya ducked, rolled forward, and came up with her shock staff raised. The razorwing's screech echoed through the arena as it wheeled around for another pass. This time, Maya stood her ground. As the creature dove toward her, she sidestepped at the last possible second and brought the staff down in a precise arc, catching the razorwing across its wing joint. The shock pulse sent the creature tumbling to the ground, stunned but unharmed. Maya didn't wait to see if it would recover. She was already moving deeper into the arena. "Excellent reaction time," one of the observing instructors commented, a Felzorian combat specialist named Thresh. She read the attack vector perfectly. "Any trained soldier could do that much," Zakthor replied, though he was privately impressed. "Let us see how she handles multiple threats." The Shadow Stalkers were pack hunters, genetically engineered predators that communicated through pheromones and coordinated their attacks with frightening efficiency. Zakthor had released 3 of them into the arena. They were currently tracking Maya through the undergrowth, invisible to standard visual scanning. Maya had reached a small clearing when she suddenly stopped. She tilted her head, listening. Then, impossibly, she turned directly toward where one of the Shadow Stalkers was hiding in the brush. "Can she see them?" Veltara asked. "That should be impossible. They are perfectly camouflaged." "No," Zakthor said slowly, watching Maya's body language. "She heard it. Or smelled it. Something gave away its position." Maya called out, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's audio pickups. "I know you're there. I can hear you breathing." The Shadow Stalker, perhaps surprised at being detected, broke cover and charged. Its packmates followed immediately after, attempting to flank Maya from 3 directions simultaneously. What happened next made every instructor in the control room fall silent. Maya moved with a speed that seemed impossible for someone of her build. She spun, driving her shock staff into the first Shadow Stalker's chest, then used its momentum to vault over its collapsing form. She landed in a crouch, already swinging at the second creature. The third Shadow Stalker managed to rake its claws across her armor, leaving deep gouges, but failing to penetrate to the flesh beneath. Maya grunted, stumbled slightly, then regained her balance. She activated the shock staff's maximum setting and drove it into the ground. The electrical pulse radiated outward, catching all 3 Shadow Stalkers and sending them into temporary paralysis. "By the void," Thresh whispered. She fought off a coordinated pack attack alone. Without injury. Her armor took damage, Zakthor pointed out, but his voice lacked conviction. He was staring at the biometric readouts. Maya's heart rate had spiked during the fight, but it was already returning to normal. Her breathing was elevated but controlled. She showed no signs of shock or panic response. Maya continued across the arena, dealing with 2 more Razorwing encounters and another Shadow Stalker with increasing confidence. She was learning the creature's attack patterns, adapting her tactics with each engagement. Finally, she reached the WYRM's territory. The Crimson WYRM was the arena's apex predator. Zakthor had personally trained it to be aggressive but not lethal, a careful balance that required years of conditioning. The creature emerged from its cave den with a hiss that made several instructors instinctively step back from the monitors. Maya stopped at the edge of the clearing and studied the WYRM. The creature studied her back, its serpentine body coiling defensively, its hood flaring to display the crimson patterns that gave it its name. "She needs to retreat," Veltara said urgently. "The WYRM will strike if she gets any closer." But Maya didn't retreat. She did something that shocked everyone watching. She deactivated her shock staff and set it down on the ground. Then she sat down cross-legged, about 10 meters from the WYRM, and simply waited. "What is she doing?" Thresh demanded. "That is not protocol. That is not even sensible." The WYRM, confused by this behavior, remained coiled. It swayed slightly, testing the air with its forked tongue. Minutes passed. The WYRM slowly, cautiously, began to uncoil. It slithered forward a few meters, stopped, tested the air again. Maya remained perfectly still. Her heart rate is decreasing, Veltara reported with disbelief. She is deliberately calming herself. The WYRM approached to within 5 meters. Its hood was still partially flared, but the aggressive posturing had diminished. It was curious now, trying to understand this strange creature that neither fled nor attacked. Maya spoke softly, her voice barely picked up by the arena's microphones. "Hey there, buddy. You're pretty magnificent, you know that? I bet you miss your home planet. These artificial environments must be boring compared to real caves." "She is talking to it," Zakthor said, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. "She is having a conversation with a crimson WYRM." The WYRM tilted its head, the gesture almost comically similar to how Maya had tilted hers when listening to the Shadow Stalkers. Then, in a movement that would be analyzed and debated by xenobiologists for years afterward, the WYRM lowered its hood completely and moved past Maya, returning to its cave without attacking. Maya stood up, retrieved her shock staff, and walked calmly to the arena exit. When she emerged, she found every instructor in the facility waiting for her. The silence was deafening. "So," Maya said cheerfully, "did I pass?" Zakthor realized his mandibles were hanging open. He closed them with a click. "How did you do that?" The WYRM has never, in 15 years, allowed anyone to pass without engaging. "Oh, I don't know. I grew up around snakes back on Earth. We had them in our yard all the time. You just have to be calm and not act like prey. They're usually more scared of you than you are of them." She paused. "Well, most of them anyway. We had a few species that were genuinely aggressive, but you learned to tell the difference. You had venomous predators in your residential area?" Veltara asked faintly. "And you considered this normal?" "I mean, yeah? We also had bears come through sometimes. And coyotes. Once a mountain lion, but that was unusual. My dad just made sure we kept the trash secured so we wouldn't attract them." Zakthor pulled up his datapad and began frantically searching through the Earth fauna database. What he found made his blood run cold. Earth had thousands of venomous species. Hundreds of large predators. Countless parasites and disease vectors. Humans had evolved not on a garden world, but in an environment where nearly everything was actively trying to kill them. "I need to update the training schedule," he announced. "Torres, you are dismissed for today. Report to the dining facility." "Finally," Maya said. "I'm starving." The dining facility was a large, open space where cadets from various species could find nutrition suited to their biological needs. The facility prided itself on accommodating even the most unusual dietary requirements. There were synthesizers for species that needed specific molecular compounds, live feeding stations for carnivores that required fresh prey, and mineral supplements for lithophages. Zakthor was in his office, staring at increasingly disturbing data about Earth's classification as a death world, when the alarms began. Not the combat alert alarms or the fire suppression alarms. These were the biohazard warnings, the kind that indicated someone had accessed the restricted storage where the facility kept substances too dangerous for normal consumption but necessary for certain species' survival. He bolted from his office and ran toward the dining facility, Veltara close behind him. They burst through the doors to find Maya sitting at a table, surrounded by a crowd of horrified onlookers, calmly eating what appeared to be a bowl of mixed ingredients. "What is she eating?" Veltara asked the nearest witness, a Krell engineer who looked like he might faint. "Everything," the Krell whispered. "She is eating everything." Zakthor approached Maya's table and looked down at her bowl. His training in xenobiology allowed him to identify most of the contents. Felsorian salt crystals, used as industrial abrasives. Fracan spice pods, which contained capsaicin levels high enough to be classified as chemical irritants. Preserved Xinthian blood fruit, which was literally on the galactic banned substances list due to its corrosive properties. And she had mixed it all with some kind of grain and what appeared to be fermented plant matter. Torres, he said carefully, where did you get those ingredients? Maya looked up, a spoonful halfway to her mouth. Oh, the commissary. They have a really interesting selection. I've been wanting to try authentic alien food since I got here. This is great. She took the bite and chewed thoughtfully. The blood fruit is a bit sour, but it's got a nice kick to it. That is not food, Zakthor said. Those are hazardous materials. The Felsorian crystals alone can burn through organic tissue. Really? They just taste salty to me. Maya held up a crystal and examined it. Kind of like those salt and vinegar chips we have back home, but more intense. A medical officer pushed through the crowd, scanner in hand. She ran it over Maya, checked the readings, scanned again, then looked at her device as if it had personally betrayed her. Her digestive system is processing everything normally, the medic reported. No signs of chemical burns, no toxic reactions, no cellular damage. It is like she is eating regular food. That is because it is regular food, Maya said. Well, regular for humans anyway. We can eat a pretty wide variety of stuff. Our stomachs are highly acidic, and we've got really aggressive gut bacteria that can break down all kinds of compounds. Plus, we actually need certain minerals and nutrients that you guys seem to classify as dangerous. Zakthor sat down heavily in the nearest chair. He pulled up his datapad once more and navigated to the section on human digestion. What he read there made him want to quit his job and retire to a nice, quiet monastery world. Humans had evolved as persistent hunters and opportunistic omnivores. They could extract nutrition from an astounding variety of sources. Their digestive systems could handle toxic alkaloids, process ethanol, and break down cellular structures that would poison most other species. They had even deliberately bred certain plants to contain higher levels of capsaicin, the same compound found in Thrakon spice pods, because they enjoyed the sensation of pain it caused. They ate poison for fun. I am going to need everyone to clear the dining facility, Zakthor announced, his voice distant. I need to speak with Torres alone. The crowd dispersed reluctantly, though many kept glancing back at Maya with expressions of horror mixed with fascination. When the room was empty except for Zakthor, Veltara, and Maya, the instructor leaned forward and fixed the human with all four of his eyes. I owe you an apology, he said. I underestimated you. I underestimated your entire species. The truth is, this academy is not prepared to train humans. Our most extreme conditions are apparently routine for your kind. Our deadliest predators are comparable to your local wildlife. Our most toxic substances are ingredients in your food. Maya set down her spoon. Okay, so what does that mean? Am I getting kicked out? No, Zakthor said. It means I am redesigning the entire program. Over the next week, Zakthor worked with Veltara and the other instructors to completely overhaul the Academy's training protocols. They accessed every available database on Earth, studying the planet's environment in exhaustive detail. What they found was both terrifying and enlightening. Earth was a world in constant flux, where tectonic activity created earthquakes and volcanic eruptions with frightening regularity. Its weather patterns generated hurricanes, tornadoes, and typhoons that could level entire settlements. Its biosphere was engaged in perpetual chemical and biological warfare, with species evolving and counter-evolving in an endless arms race of toxins and immunities. And humans had not just survived in this environment. They had thrived. They had spread across their entire planet, adapting to every climate from frozen tundra to scorching deserts. They had domesticated some of their predators and learned to cultivate their own food from plants that were literally poisonous in their wild state. Zakthor called Maya into his office on the 8th day. She arrived to find him surrounded by holographic displays showing various Earth environments, from deep ocean trenches to mountain peaks. I have a proposition for you, he said. The Galactic Council has agreed to fund a new training facility. We are calling it the Terran Protocols Program. It will use Earth as the baseline for survival training instead of the galactic standard. Maya's eyes widened. You want to make Earth the standard? Isn't that kind of extreme? Extreme is relative, Zakthor said. After reviewing the data, the Council agrees that our current training is insufficient. We have been preparing soldiers for conflicts in relatively safe environments. But the galaxy is not safe. There are Deathworlds out there that rival or exceed Earth's danger levels. We need soldiers who can survive them. He pulled up an image of Earth from space, the blue and green sphere hanging in the void. Your planet has already done the work of creating the perfect survival training ground. We just need to learn from it. And you, Torres, are going to help us do that. Me? I'm just one person. There are billions of humans. Shouldn't you be working with, I don't know, Earth's military or something? We will be. But I need someone who understands both human capabilities and galactic standards. Someone who has been through our existing program and can help us bridge the gap. I am offering you a position as a cultural liaison and assistant instructor. Maya sat back in her chair, processing this. So instead of being a student, I'd be teaching aliens how to survive like humans. Essentially, yes. Your first class would begin in 3 months. We are recruiting cadets from species that specifically requested more challenging training. They do not know yet what they're getting into. A slow smile spread across Maya's face. When do I start? 3 months later, Instructor Zakthor stood at the observation deck of the new Terran Protocols training facility, watching as the first class of cadets arrived. They were elite soldiers from a dozen different species, each one confident in their abilities, each one certain they could handle whatever the Academy threw at them. Maya Torres stood beside him, now wearing an instructor's insignia. She had spent the past months working with human consultants to design courses based on Earth survival techniques. The results were courses that made even Zakthor's scales itch with apprehension. The cadets would learn to persist hunt, chasing prey over long distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. They would learn to process and consume a wide variety of nutrients, including substances currently classified as hazardous. They would learn to function in high-gravity environments, toxic atmospheres, and extreme temperature variations. They would learn to coexist with predators instead of simply avoiding them. Most importantly, they would learn what it meant to come from a death world, and why humans approached the concept of survival differently than every other species in the galaxy. Are you ready for this? Zakthor asked Maya. She watched the cadets disembark, each one trying to look confident and unbothered. Are they ready is the better question. Zakthor's mandibles spread in what had become, over the past months, genuine amusement rather than a threat display. No. They are not. But they will be. The first cadet, a massive Thrakan warrior who looked like he could tear through a bulkhead with his bare claws, approached Maya with obvious skepticism. He towered over her by nearly 3 feet, his scales gleaming with ceremonial war paint. You are one of the instructors, he asked, his tone making it clear he found this doubtful. You are very small. Maya looked up at him with a perfectly pleasant smile. I'm human. We come from a Class 12 death world. I'm small by your standards, sure, but I evolved to be an endurance predator on a planet where almost everything else wanted to kill me. By the end of this program, you're going to understand why size isn't the only thing that matters in survival. She gestured toward the training facility entrance. Now, let's start with something simple. A 10-kilometer run in 1.2 standard gravity. Should take you about an hour. For me, it's my morning warm-up back home. The Thrakan warrior glanced at Zakthor, looking for some indication this was a joke. Zakthor simply nodded. The warrior's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. Welcome to the Terran Protocols program, Maya announced to the assembled cadets. We're the deadliest creature in the galaxy is going to teach you how to survive like a human. Trust me, by the end of this, you're going to have a whole new appreciation for Deathworlders. As the cadets filed into the facility, many of them exchanging worried glances, Zakthor felt something he had not experienced in decades, genuine excitement for what was to come. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had known for millennia, that survival was not about being the biggest or the strongest or having the most advanced technology. It was about persistence, adaptability, and the sheer, stubborn refusal to quit, no matter how impossible the odds. And nobody in the known galaxy was better at that than humans.